When buying a cruising boat, many people forget to consider how easy or difficult it will be to maintain. However, if you can't get to a system easily, you're unlikely to keep it in good shape. Hi there, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I share my thoughts on maintainability. Hopefully, it'll get you something new to think about when you're shopping for your next cruising boat. Okay, first, let's give a big shout out to today's sponsor. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Fast Seas. Plan your next passage using fastseas.com. Whether you're after speed or comfort, Fast Speeds will find the optimum route to your destination. It is a fantastic tool for route planning. I'm serious. Fast Seas, making weather routing simple. And use coupon code GALLEY for an exclusive 10% discount. Maintainability. Basically, I'm talking about building systems or designing particular items so they can be maintained as needed. Now, I get that space is tight on a boat, but shoehorning equipment into places, picking equipment without a thought about how it will need to be serviced, is just asking for trouble. Necessary maintenance won't be done if it's nearly impossible to do so. Now, Dave and I have always prided ourselves on keeping our boat in great mechanical shape. She may not always be the prettiest boat with shiny bright work, but things work. But man, sometimes designers make that hard. 3 things that happened on our Gemini came to mind, in particular as I've done. 1, we figured out a way around. 1 caused an injury. Just 1 was hard as hell to work on. I'm not trying to rant here. I'm really not. But it's more of things to look at as you're looking at boats. Considering maintainability when comparing a couple of boats may make one suddenly look a lot better than the other. The overall ease of maintenance will make your cruising much more enjoyable, both as it will take less time and things will work the way they should. So what are you wondering? What are the 3 things we discovered with Barefoot Gal? First was our battery compartment. Batteries go in under the nav station, and then they're slid forward under another lock. Put the batteries in, you have to sit on a step, lift them straight out in front of you. It's not easy with something that weighs 50 to 70 pounds. Then, once they're in place, it's impossible to reach the forwardmost one, add water to it. Literally impossible. The only way to add water is to disconnect all the batteries, remove 2 from the battery compartment, and then slide the 3rd one out where it could be accessed. And put them all back in and reconnect them. That is not going to happen on a monthly basis. Thankfully, we learned from a friend about battery watering system. Turned it into about a 5-minute job so that basically it's a little tube that just clips onto the top of the acid openings and you can add water that way. But if friends had not told us such a thing existed, we would have had to go with AGM batteries. And this was back before lithiums were really a possibility. It was one of the reasons, in fact, that we did end up going to lithiums when we did. But seriously, the time this thing was built in 1999, lithiums were not possible. They just weren't. So in the world, it's off with putting a battery in a place that it cannot be serviced. Okay. Second one is, let's talk about the engine compartment on the boat. The engine had to have been installed and then the cockpit installed around. The sides of the engine are accessed by removing side panels to the engine compartments. Fine, except that to do any work, you have to lean over a 1/4-inch piece of fiberglass that seriously digs into your ribs. It still hurts after putting a pillow over it. When Dave last went to change the zinc on the heat exchanger, he moved just wrong on that little piece of fiberglass, badly bruised his ribs. There's a designer out there who has never thought about how you'd get to many of the engine components. So you have to think about these things before you plunk down your money. Are you going to change the oil, the transmission fluid, tighten the alternator belt, change the alternator? Go right down the list. Look at everything. Think also about things like pumps, water hoses, wirings. Can the headliner easily be removed to get to things hidden behind it? What about wall panels with items hidden behind them? All of that you need to be thinking about because nobody else is going to do it for you. And finally, on the Gemini, well, our steaming light. It's the one that just annoys the hell out of me. You know, any light is going to need the bulb changed periodically. It's a given. We all know that doing any work up the mast dramatically increases the difficulty. And yes, the steaming light is up the mast. Okay, once you're up there, it's hard to have any leverage or get to just the right spot. Screws and nuts can be dropped, and the smaller they are, the more likely they are to be dropped. There's no table or work surface up there. You're usually using one hand to keep you in place, so there's only one hand for the work. Okay, our steaming light went out. Seems simple enough. Go up, change the bulb, come down. But guess what? To change the bulb, you have to remove the fixture from the mast, then remove two tiny, itty bitty screws from the back of it so that the lens can be removed. Actually, when you remove those screws, the lens just falls off. Hope you had your hand in just the right spot. Simultaneously grab the screws and the lens. This thing is sold as a masthead light. It's not like they didn't know someone would be in midair trying to change the bulb. I understand it has to be waterproof, but I think it could be designed a heck of a lot better. Okay, the bottom line is, we really enjoy our Gemini camera. Part of its attractiveness originally was its price. But every time we discover something like this, we repeat, the Gemini was built for a price point. In other words, $5 here and there adds up, and choices by the original designers and manufacturers were made based on cost. But maintainability was sacrificed. It's something to look at in comparing boats. One boat may cost a little bit less than the other, but it may be a lot easier to maintain. Now, every used boat is going to be different from what previous owners may have done. So you can't assume that all boats of the same make are good or poor as far as maintainability is concerned. You have to really look at it. Now, it's important to note most surveys aren't even going to discuss maintainability. The surveyors don't consider that at all. If you're buying your first boat, you may want to specifically ask the surveyor their thoughts on access or even pay a mechanic for their assessment. No boat's going to be perfect, but it's nice to know ahead of time where the challenges will lie. Okay, that's it for this episode of the Boat Galley podcast. If you gave it a little bit of thought for when you're buying your next boat, then please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes.